Wolverine in the anime style makes so much sense. The character has so many roots in Japan.
He's the quintessential bad boy. He is the James Dean of the Marvel Universe, both as a lover and as someone who mixes it up whenever he can.
We love all the different versions of Wolverine that have appeared in Western animation. Who doesn't want to see what we're able to do with anime?
Wolverine is a character who, by nature, has so many of the more traditional ideals of the samurai, being the rogue soldier who's out there, who fights for honor, who fights for love.
He has these classic stories that are set in Japan, including kind of a groundbreaking graphic novel.
Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, many, many years ago, started this storyline about him and his one true love.
I'm actually using that Frank Miller, Chris Claremont series as the basis for the Wolverine piece. I'm using it and I'm expanding it.
It kind of explored his relationship to the land and the people and the culture, and it set up this kind of like beautiful love story.
He's come to Japan. He wants to find Mariko, but he's actually come there on other business. Looking for Mariko becomes secondary to looking for Shingen and the organization that Shingen is involved with. And it turns out to be not just a small organization, it turns out to be a very big organization.
That story sometimes weaves back into the comics, and here we're able to sort of really focus on it and yet build a lot of action and drama attached to their love story.
It's an incredibly sad story in that respect, because Yukio sees someone who's just like her, and that's what she always wanted. Logan looks at Mariko and sees someone who is the exact opposite of him, and that is what he always wanted.
His fight to be with her and his fight against himself kind of just paralleled Logan versus this samurai ideal, and how he just, he wants to be that, but he can't quite fit that.
The notion of Wolverine as the samurai, as the rogue, as the unknown factor in that world is just something that hit.
There is a certain amount of the man with no name archetype to the man, which makes the artistic take on Wolverine in this project all the more interesting.
When Wolverine fights, it's very intense, it's fast-paced, there's a lot of cutting and slashing, and oftentimes, a big pile-on of multiple villains. So really the best way to execute that is in animation and this kind of anime.
Wolverine always played a little older, no matter where he is. One of the things that has made that character popular through the years is that he's a very visceral, very feral character.
I think fans have always wanted to see him let loose. They've always wanted to see Wolverine, do what he's best at. And that's using his claws.
And what anime does afford us is the opportunity to sort of push that level of violence, and whether it is the blood or whether it is that when he snicks, that those people are actually going to fall down and get cut.
He's a bit of a samurai. So to see him executed that way was just the most organic fit of all 4 series.
The idea of the claws being another symbol of the swords, it's just something that readily worked into that world.
It's sort of like in storytelling, you put the gun on the wall, you want to see it used by the 3rd act. You give a guy claws, you want to see him use them.
There's not a lot of characters that you really do want to see, portray a level of violence that you don't pull back from.
You want to see him outmatched by, a dozen guys, or by a huge statue come to life, or take on the entire island of Madripoor. You want to see these things, and you want to see them how you imagine them when you're reading the comic.
Wolverine obviously speaks of the craziest action sequences you can come up with. So pitting an entire city against one man, it was unavoidable.
I think for me, these are the most fully realized fight sequences I've ever seen for Wolverine.
Wolverine's design has certainly undergone a journey from when they were first kind of developing it.
Madhouse sort of compromised a bit, retained some of the cool elements that they wanted to, changed his physique a little bit, but also brought it back closer to the traditional comic book Wolverine.
To my mind, what the artistic interpretation of Wolverine in the anime cuts directly to is the heart of the character. He's the wounded, haunted romantic lead. He's the man who can never love for fear of its death.
One of the things about doing the anime is trying to work together to find what works for Madhouse and for the Japanese audience, and then preserve what's kind of worked for the Western audience and in the comics.
He doesn't look as westernized as we would normally see him, so it's a very traditional anime version of the character.
When you look at the face of that character in the anime, it's exactly who he is. He's the tortured romantic lead. And they've just ripped that out of him and made that his skin, as opposed to the classical depiction where that's what's hidden deep inside him, and you only learn about that the more you spend time with him. They've just externalized the root of the character.
Warren created a series that takes place in Japan and is based on Wolverine's comic continuity. So it's very natural to the character to be animated in anime.
This was not a Stranger in a Strangeland opportunity. This was actually a way to further exploit the characters that already existed there in a world that is part of canon.
We don't really specify where Wolverine fits chronologically with the other series, but Wolverine is the link between the four series.
He's a good proxy for the viewer. He can come into a story and kind of, he has the sense of humor and this kind of way of cutting to the chase that is very human and very much what a normal, regular person would kind of say.
俺はタクシードライバーじゃない。もちろん金を払う気もない。
Whether it is his sense of humor or whether it is that he's just the toughest little mug around.
He's a great character to insert in other storylines, and he has all these connections to the underworld, so he can pop up in any place.
And I don't take away the romantic element of him. He is that bad boy that every man wants to be and that every woman wants to try to tame. So, that popularity is certainly something that you can see, existing in a world that Iron Man lives in and X-Men live in.
He's including that sense that, oh yes, he's a part of a larger group, that kind of sense that they're allies, that they could call on each other.
Being able to see this classic story animated, it never really has been done as a series that fully explains this love story and his relationship with Japan. I think that's really exciting. I think this is a fan's dream.
No matter, how we tell these stories, they are always stories of duality. They are stories of a mortal who is trying to do something at a more heroic level.
What makes Wolverine kind of different than some of your other heroes is that he does have that dark side. He does struggle to deal with it. And sometimes he loses. Sometimes he overcomes it.